Yes, the title is certainly very spicy, but let my gameplay talk. So in the background, you can see here, we've just beaten the Primo Geovishap. So now we're going to go directly, without any delay, onto floor 12, chamber 3, and let's see on the first attempt what's going to happen. Alright, so this is going to be my strategy, and yeah, there is no Xiangling. This would have been the Sukokomon team if the Traveler had been Xiangling instead, but I will show you why Xiangling actually kind of hinders this team and why the variation that you're seeing in the background is just so much better. So far so good. We can see here that we are sort of hitting the enemies. We can see that we are doing a lot of damage in an AoE and so on. And I can promise you, Fischl's got a 4-star weapon, nothing fancy. It's the same with the Traveler, 4-star weapon, Sucrose 4-star weapon. They're just built like with full EM and so on. And obviously my Kokomi is going to be the same Kokomi I'll use when I run with Xiangling. That is the C6R5 Kokomi, but that doesn't really matter. The C6R5ness has absolutely no real impact here because we're not going to play Kokomi in a really offensive way. But yeah, so this is what the team is doing currently. And yes, I do know that with some other meta team comps, you guys can probably certainly clear it faster. I can certainly clear it a lot faster in less than even half the time that we're sort of taking right now. But the point is, this team without Xiangling did not really do too badly, and now let's see how this is going to look like with Xiangling and so on. And you might be like, well, where's your energy and so on? Well, this is the thing about Sukokomon. There's, even though on the spreadsheets that you might be guaranteed to have the energy theoretically always available, practically, yeah, that's not always going to work. And as you can see here, we've sort of hit a bit of a stumbling block. So you know what, we'll do what all good theory crafters and what all good meta players do. We will just reset, because mostly a lot of people have said, well, we don't need healers, we just reset until we get it right. We just reset until we crit, because that's how we choose to play the Spiral Abyss instead of having a shred of consistency, which is always kind of funny in my opinion. But alright, so we're now going to try and do it. You know, I'm trying my best to swirl Guoba, because if you don't swirl Guoba, no, they're going to get so mad at you. And yeah, here we are. We don't have Kokomi's Elemental Burst, but we don't need it because that's not the point of the into charge attack sort of recipe that's in the Sukokomon formula. It's basically to ensure that Xiangling can actually sort of vaporize off of the hits and so on, and also for a couple of other reasons. But yeah, now that the odds are actually in our favor, that we've grouped the enemies, you can see Sukokomon definitely doing more damage than the other team that I showed you with the Dendro Traveler. That's expected. I would be very surprised if that team does more damage, but there is still a problem. The problem here with Sukokomon and most of these Fairycraft teams is that if you try and play by the book, you will very often get a massive DPS loss, whereas if you sometimes just stray a bit off of the book and you understand that there are certain core gameplay loops that you can work around, then you're going to be much better off than trying to follow a certain team right to the script. And this is exactly what makes Sukokomon such a difficult team. This is exactly why I haven't really seen this being in the mainstream media. And what I mean mainstream is, if I just go onto YouTube and be like, Sukokomon, like why most of the videos is like from 6 to 9 months ago in the recommendation. And basically what it boils down is the fact that Sukokomon's got an incredibly wide team damage distribution, in other words like a range of outcomes, and it really does depend on how skillfully you can sort of manage it. So in contrast to Sukokomon, why is just the replacement of Xiangling just so much better? What does the Traveler actually offer? Well, this is the thing. Without Xiangling, you are sort of not forced to play according to the script, but you can do something much more interesting. And hopefully you've understood now in the background what we're sort of doing. So basically, we are tapping into a taser team, essentially, with an occasional sort of Dendro overlay. Whereas in Sukokomon, the bulk of your damage should come from basically Sucrose and Xiangling. But in this case, we're actually spreading out our damage much more evenly and so on. And hopefully you've caught on by now why this team is so good, especially on this floor. And I'm showing it to you a second time, and I will show this again a third time with a different variation to show you that this is more consistent, provided you just need to know how the enemies are working. There's no real order in which you need to play a lot of these things, and this is what's so beautiful about this team. And certainly, as you can see, the damage is really not lacking, especially for one of the more tougher spiral abysses that we've had in terms of a DPS check. Just do note that this team is a bit less powerful than the Sukokomon in a single target, and that's just sort of by design. But in any case, so what is the secret? Well, let's just retry. As you can see here on screen, I'm going to retry. I've just beaten the Spiral Abyss again with this team. So what is the secret? Well, look at how I'm playing with this team. First of all, I'm just sort of putting down my abilities as normal, and now I'm interrupting the big Bishop, dodging the attack, getting a bit of sort of swirl off, and look at that. What I've done is I've interrupted the enemy teams like very strategically, and this is the big thing that you'll note here. This is what you don't really see with Sukokomon, is because there are certain instances in that team where you can't do this constant interruption. So you might say, well, look, you just split the enemies and they're not all grouped up. That's okay, because they're going to come back. It's okay if they're not in the sort of Dendro travelers like field and so on. The point here is the enemies cannot be annoying. They cannot reduce my elemental burst, they cannot pop bubbles, and that's because I'm cycling through my abilities in such a way such that I can constantly just keep on interrupting them. And this is what the Traveler's E is so good for, her Q is so good for, whereas with Xiangling, well, her Guoba can't really interrupt anything, and her Pyronado with the overload will just knock enemies all over. But yeah, here what we can see is a very consistent team, which also then allows you to not use Thrilling Tales on Kokomi, but you can actually play Kokomi in a bit more of a carry role, and that's why I kind of like it. Alright guys, thanks for watching, cheers.